Hello all, and welcome to the Propaganda Hour with Michael Pickens and Sava Vasiliev.
Hello, thank you, Kirill. We've got a great show for everybody today. We have a spectacular show for everybody today, don't we, Mike?
Yes, we do. We've got Governor Gary Johnson who's going to be with us today.
Yes, sir. Mike was able to get a hold of their campaign and brought him on board, and we're very glad to have him. We're going to discuss we're going to compliment Gary Johnson on the areas we think he's doing great, and we're going to question him on the areas where we think he is acting questionably from our philosophical point of view. So, I think that's a fair way of saying it, don't you, Mike?
Yes, it's a very fair way of saying it. We're going to break through the propaganda.
We're going to break through the propaganda because this is the Propaganda Hour. And if anybody wants to call in and add in, because like I said, we're going to grill Gary and get to the truth and meat and bones of what he's saying and what he has said in debates. Again, Gary Johnson is a two-term governor from New Mexico, and I believe he got over 200,000 votes or something like that, Mike.
Yeah, something like that. He got about 50% of the vote.
Yeah, around 60%. It is a smaller state, so the number might sound smaller, but as far as percentage-wide, he definitely got the majority of the votes in New Mexico. And recently, Gary decided to hit the campaign trail. And, well, not recently, about, I would say, a year ago. And we've been kind of following his campaign a little because Ron Paul and him are the libertarian-leaning candidates. So Gary has been in our rearview mirror. And let's not waste any time.
Is Governor Johnson on the line?
He is not yet.
He's not yet on the line. Okay. Well, while we wait for him to call in, just want to go run down a brief overview of his resume, which is very impressive for a two-term Republican governor. Now, he's a two-term Republican governor in New Mexico. He vetoed over 750 spending bills while he was governor, and that was more than all the other 49 governors combined. He left New Mexico as one of only 4 states with a balanced budget, and he won election both times by a margin of about 10% in a 2-to-1 Democrat state against the Democrat. So, which was pretty amazing. Wouldn't you say, Sava?
Yes. Yeah, well, another thing Gary Johnson did that I kind of admire is he banned late-term abortions in his state. And I think that's a pretty common-sense thing to have done. Late-term abortions, I mean, whatever stance you have on abortion, I think we can all generally agree that it's not a lizard or a monkey or a turtle in the 3rd trimester, but a human being. And that's something else Gary Johnson banned in his state, although he considers himself pro-life. Would you say that's right, Mike?
Pro-choice, actually.
I mean, excuse me. I meant to say a little bit of dyslexia. I meant to say, although he considers himself pro-choice, but he did, he still did ban that procedure in the state, which I thought was great. And Mike pointed out that he did a veto well over 700 spending bills, which is something that we as libertarians and true conservatives, I guess you could say, really look to do. We look to spend as minimal as possible and get the most as we can from our tax dollars instead of spending too much and having the rest go in the garbage can, a garbage can called Iraq or Afghanistan or any other garbage cans around the world.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so, he also just recently came out against drones, using drones in the United States.
Oh, wonderful. What did he say about that?
He's against it. He's coming out against it now. I don't know if he's against using drones in other countries. That'd be nice. And we'll find out when he comes on.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, because I hope we'll get to ask him these questions because this is important. I mean, I'm assuming he's against drone attacks anywhere, not just in the United States, but I'm sure there's just a little delay, right, Mike? These things happen with presidential candidates.
Oh, of course, all the time.
You know, he's about to call in, and then the CIA calls him.
Last week when we were going to have Santorum on, he just bailed on us last minute. So
yeah, this happened.
Some campaign stop or something they had to do.
I don't know what's with these people. We were going to Gingrich didn't show up, and Santorum didn't show up. Well, another thing, Gary Johnson has been a crusader, and he's been a crusader in ending the war on drugs.
Yes.
And I think that's something he can definitely get some credit for. He's been outright for legalizing marijuana, for ending the war on drugs. He's been in his own state putting people through more rehabilitation type programs rather than incarceration type sentences, and he's been great with that sort of thing.
Why don't you go ahead and we're going to play the first clip.
Okay.
We'll get one of our questions out there.
Okay, yeah, let's. Mike's going to begin with what we were going to ask him first. Well, Mike, let's go to Mike's first question clip.
Governor, should we close Guantanamo Bay? Should the people who are there either be tried in federal district courts or returned to their country, or should we keep it open and let them stay there uncharged, untried for the rest of their lives?
Well, when President Obama didn't close Guantanamo, and that was one of his promises, I really looked into the issue, and I've had a lot of prominent libertarians tell me that if it weren't for Guantanamo, that we would have to create that situation somewhere else. So I've kind of been sold on the notion that this is something that we have to have, if it's not Guantanamo, it's going to be somewhere else, that these are enemy combatants and not U.S. citizens. So I'm on. I've been wooed over to the side that there's a reason for keeping it open.
Got it. Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico, thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.
Yes, we should have Governor Johnson coming on right now.
Right about now is when he's going to be commenting about that particular clip.
They actually calling in. He had the wrong.
Governor Johnson is on the line.
Governor, welcome to the Propaganda Hour. Governor, you there?
I am. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I got the wrong phone number. It was in the calendar as the wrong phone number and called your cell phone. Sorry for all that.
Oh, it's okay. Well, hey, we went ahead and went through your intro. We announced you, and we were going into questions. Without you here, I just started asking Sava. He was pretending to be you. So now that we have you here, you're going to be able to answer them.
Yes,
which is great.
Mike,
let's do it.
Now, Governor, I agree with you on most everything, but there's a couple of issues that me and my pro-peace libertarian friends have some questions about, and one of them is closing Guantanamo. Do you still have that same stance? Would you like to keep Guantanamo open?
Well, I got into a lot of trouble for that answer, and I can see why. I didn't answer it correctly.
Okay.
What I should have said, and what I've said since then, is that we need to shut down Guantanamo for reasons of torture and for reasons of detainment without being charged. That said, Guantanamo may in fact be a facility that we do need, meaning that we need an offshore facility to be able to house these enemy combatants. But for reasons of torture, for reasons of detainment without being charged, that practice needs to stop regardless of whether it's at Guantanamo or anywhere else.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. In a free and open society, it doesn't seem the right thing to do for a country to have a secret prison in another country away from the eyes of, let's say, the media, or
Well, in this case, now let's not defending Guantanamo in and of itself, but just the notion of housing prisoners outside of the country. The fact is, they're not U.S. citizens. They are being labeled as enemy combatants. They're being subject to a military tribunal, which we subject our own military personnel to. But the issue is that we are detaining these individuals, not charging them, and then, of course, we're subjecting them to torture, which I think we've fought wars over to not have torture and to not detain without being charged. So this is a situation that is very difficult, and where do we do that if not at a facility like that? Now, what I'm hearing you say is, why not on our own shores? Perhaps that is the place. But regardless of where we house the prisoners, again, no torture, no detainment without being charged. It may be cost-effective to, in fact, leave a Guantanamo open as a detention facility.
Okay, so you are against torture, you're for giving prisoners their due process, but you're also, at the same time, it may be economical to keep Guantanamo open. Know what you're saying?
You got it, yes.
Okay. Sal, I think you had a question?
Yeah, no, you answered that. I wanted to sort of get into...
just to jump in, we actually have a caller with a question.
But no, that's okay. We're going to hold off on the callers for a few minutes.
All right.
Governor, I wanted to ask you, I want to commend you, first of all, on your stance against the war on drugs. I've seen you in the debates. I've seen you in interviews. You're relentless. You've laid down the law, why this is harming our own people. So I guess my question is maybe from my point of view is don't you realize that so long as there are private prisons, there will always be a drug war? And the reason I ask that is because as far as I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to get your point of view, it seems from my point of view that as long as there's private prisons, which I understand you're an advocate of, there will always be that lobby to lobby local police officials and government officials to keep continuing the drug war so they can continue getting prisoners in their private prisons and their stock price can go up. Do you see it differently, Governor?
I absolutely see it differently. In New Mexico, I ended up privatizing half of the state's prisons. I did that administratively because it was a huge issue when I took office that we had about 600 prisoners housed out of state, and the federal courts were running the prisons in New Mexico under a consent decree. So this is an apples-to-apples comparison because the courts were running the prisons in New Mexico, that the private prisons were able to offer the same goods and services at 66 cents on the dollar as opposed to $1 on the public side. I never saw any lobbying of any sort on the part of private prisons. I always maintained as governor of New Mexico that if we were to pass rational drug policy and empty the prisons, I always maintained that it would be easier to empty the private prisons first as opposed to the public prisons because of the unions and the influence that they have. And I would like to point at the biggest detractor or the biggest critic to Prop 19 in California, which was the initiative to legalize marijuana, was the public prison union in California. So respectfully, I think it's the opposite. I think public prison unions, just as we saw in California, are going to lobby for more prisoners in prison as opposed to private prisons where you really have a disconnect. And from my vantage point, I never saw it at all. Not that that isn't or shouldn't be a perception that you would have regarding private prisons, but from my experience, anything but the reality.
All right. Well, that's okay. That's definitely an answer. I definitely have some reservations on that because I still feel that every time they get a prisoner, their stock price goes up. So it almost seems like, here to give you an example, Governor. A few days ago, a massive private prison corporation offered 48 states to buy out their prisons and make them private. And part of the deal was that the states would have to guarantee the private prison a 90% fill rate. So, and if they don't fill up in 90%, then they have to pay the state back for any prisoners they didn't incarcerate. Have you heard about something like that?
Well, but what you're talking about, so first of all, let me just get back to the dollars comparison.
Okay.
In the case of New Mexico, on an apples-to-apples basis, they were able to provide the same goods and services for two-thirds the price. So what you're talking about is a situation where they simply want guarantees to be able to afford the infrastructure, and this is what I'm assuming, is they're simply wanting guarantees to be able to afford that infrastructure. Look, I'm for emptying the prisons. I'm for reducing 2.3 million people behind bars. But I think what you may unfairly be doing, and is looking at one statistic, which, if you were a private contractor and you were going to come in and replace all of the state highway positions with private highway positions, you would probably want a guarantee that you're going to be able to pave a certain amount of highway every year, 90% relative to what you are currently doing, or you wouldn't be able to afford to come in and replace the entire state highway personnel with private highway personnel other than with that guarantee.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Governor Johnson here. You know, either way you look at it, private prisons, public prisons, they're going to lobby for stricter laws. But if we get rid of the drug war, you're going to have, half the prisoners are going to disappear, and we're not going to have these type of issues. And then maybe our police will be able to focus on real crime.
Hey, Kirill, let's take a quick question. By the way, for all the callers calling in, for today, just a quick question because we got a lot to go through. So let's take the first caller with her question.
All right, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, it's Billy Sunshine. Hello, Governor.
Hey.
I agree with you very much about the war on drugs, but a quick before we talk about that, a quick comment on this private prison thing. In Pennsylvania, the private prisoners were bribing judges to deliver adolescents to them. That judge is in jail today where he belongs. Privatizing prisons and bringing the profit motive will probably mean prisoners won't eat as well, and who knows what else. Privatizing never, ever is a good way to go in this sort of situation. About 20 years ago, I was talking to George Stephanopoulos at the airport.
Yeah, Billy, I got to get your question really quick.
It's about the legalization of marijuana,
okay.
And the only thing keeping us from legalizing marijuana, the people obviously are doing it, even though it's illegal. How do we really get to control the political class again? Because they are now the most immoral class in America.
Great question. Thank you. Governor.
Well, I can't let the private prison thing go by without just pointing out that my own experience with the private prisons was the federal courts were running the prisons in New Mexico. There was going to be no fewer calories served up from the private side than the public side. The goods and services were going to be identical, or it just wasn't going to fly. Federal court wasn't going to have anything to do with it. So on an apples-to-apples basis, it was two-thirds of the cost. I think that's good government. When you can provide...
What about the bribery in Pennsylvania?
Kirill. Governor, what about the bribing? Really quick before we move on to the next clip. And then, Billy, I got to let you go. What about the bribing, Governor?
Well, the bribing, that's going to happen on the public side, which, we every day we open up the newspaper and we read about corruption, whether it's public or private. It happens. And it shouldn't happen, but it does, and you'd like to think that those involved would get punished. In this case, you're pointing out a situation where they were punished. I just don't think corruption is exclusive to either the public or the private side, nor is it more prevalent in one or the other. It's
wherever the more money is involved brings the more corruption.
And that's why we do have laws to protect us from that kind of those kinds of egregious actions.
All right. Well, thank you for your call, Billy.
You're welcome. Since privatizing, we have more prisoners, not less.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Billy, but Mike does agree with you. So we've got a 50-50 consensus so far.
And you guys, I just look, I can't shy away from my own personal experience. I privatized half the state prisons in New Mexico. I can't not tell you my reality regarding this situation.
Oh, yeah. we really appreciate your reality. Brings a different perspective.
Yeah, that's it. You gave a very clear answer on that. The next thing, we're moving straight along because we want to cover everything with you, Governor. We've got a second clip here. This is about from a year ago. You were on the Sean Hannity show, and you guys were discussing the Iraq War. So let's roll that clip and then get the governor's response.
So Sean Hannity is going to be talking to Gary Johnson, his former New Mexico governor. They have an interesting theory on how we should pay for the Iraq War. Let's go to clip number 10.
Let me go on one other issue with you. You are not supportive of the war. You were not supportive of the war effort in Iraq. You're not supportive of the war effort in Afghanistan.
And originally I was. Originally Afghanistan was about getting Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda.
But you're not any longer. You think we should pull out?
Well, they're not there. And we're building roads, schools, bridges, hospitals in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're borrowing 43 cents out of every dollar right now that we're spending. I just think that we've bankrupted ourselves and that we're going to be of no use to anyone worldwide as a bankrupt nation.
I actually have had an idea. Nobody listens to little old Sean Hannity, but I think the Iraqis, with all their oil resources, need to pay us back for their liberation. Every single solitary penny.
I really thought that from the beginning. I thought that was kind of part of the equation.
Should have been part of the deal.
Should have been part of the deal.
I think it should be now. I think they owe us a lot for that.
Now, Governor, maybe you misspoke, but do you really mean that you think the Iraqis, all those innocent people that were bombed, should pay back for the invasion of their own country?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think that in what I thought going into Iraq that was somewhat implied was that we would get paid back from that money, but that was just conjecture on my part, and I thought that was part of. I really thought that was going to be part of the deal. Is that something that I would have advocated? No, I would not have advocated that. And look, it's just it's a situation that we should have never been involved in the first place. And I was on record prior to us going into Iraq. Look, let's not do this. We're going to find ourselves in a civil war to which there will be no end, and I did not see a military threat coming from Iraq.
No, thank you for that clarification, because that's the position I always saw that you took. And so when you went on Hannity and he sort of led you, steered you to say something like that, and you said it, I wasn't sure if you quite actually meant that, but I guess it was sort of a philosophical debate. My thing when I heard that was I was just thinking, I mean, imagine if the Americans told the Japanese that they were unfortunately going to have to foot the bill for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, it just seems kind of to me like collective punishment by the United States against innocent civilians. And in Iraq's case, it seems like hundreds of thousands, if not over a million by some estimates, have died because of the bombings by the U.S. And so I know you're completely opposed to the wars, so I just wanted to clarify your position from the Sean Hannity show.
Yeah, and I guess the philosophical in the weeds going through my mind is the notion that somehow Iraqis as a democracy, as a constitutional republic, would perhaps make reparation for costs involved. But at this point, that just seems absurd. At the beginning, it didn't seem so absurd that Iraqis themselves would pay for that liberation. Again, it just seems nutty. When you in the rearview mirror, it sounds nutty relative to what we know today.
All right.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, and just realize, Governor, these questions actually have been coming into us from other libertarians out there, and these are some of the things that they're most concerned about in terms of your record and what you said in the past. I've got one more really good one, actually, that has to do with the Libertarian Party itself. A lot of people are worried about a repeat of 2008 with presidential candidate Bob Barr. You know, recently he just endorsed Newt Gingrich, who is very much anti-libertarian. And the question, I guess, is what are your plans, you know, after this election with the Libertarian Party?
Well, this is not a Bob Barr action here for me. This is I've made the switch. So it's very conceivable that this carries, for me, from my standpoint, it's very conceivable that this carries through to 2016 also. That this is something that gets built on. I'll tell you just. I was at the Florida State Fair last week, and I was at the Libertarian booth, and I bought myself a Libertarian T-shirt to wear working behind the booth. Little trivia. Do you know how many Republican T-shirts that I have worn in my life? Well, the answer is none, not one. And the reason I've never worn a Republican T-shirt is because somebody would come up to me and ask me to defend some stupid part of what Republicans are all about. Always believing as a Republican that these are stupid things that Republicans are about. And I never wanted to put myself in a position of having to defend myself against others that I'm associating with. As a libertarian, I have no issue at all defending anything that libertarians stand for. And that's my T-shirt story. So this is not a Bob Barr-esque situation at all. For me, this is a move that I find very liberating. I think as libertarians, we have a chance here to change the world a little bit. And I also look beyond 2012 to 2016 to continue to grow on this. So I'm excited by it.
No, Gary,
I'm liberated by it.
No, that sounds, and both Mike and I are both in the Libertarian Party. We're very excited that, you've decided to cross over. Do you think that this drug war will, ever end? It just seems like, with Bob Barr, the reason I bring that up is because Bob Barr was fighting drugs in the prosecuting drug users in the 90s, and then he became our Libertarian nominee, almost a 360. And it just seems like there's a lot of people who say they're against the drug war, but then change their minds and then change their minds. And you've been consistent on it. Why can't more people be consistent on that issue?
In 2000, I debated Bob Barr at the Republican National Convention in Philadelphia on drug policy. And of course, I'm debating to legalize marijuana. I'm debating what I consider to be rational drug policy, and I'm debating Bob Barr. And I just thought that it was really, really ironic that the Libertarians nominated Bob Barr in 2008. And I understand that Bob Barr did a really good job of articulating libertarian beliefs and principles out on the campaign trail. But how does a libertarian nominee endorse Newt Gingrich? How's that possible? I don't get it. Did you guys see that the ACLU 3 weeks ago came out with a report card on all of the presidential candidates? Did you guys see that by chance?
Not sure. No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to have to fill you in then. So 24 Liberty Torches was a perfect score. This was the ACLU. They graded all of the presidential candidates. Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney, 0 Liberty Torches. Newt Gingrich, 4 Liberty Torches. President Obama, 16 Liberty Torches. Ron Paul, 18 Liberty Torches. Gary Johnson, 21 Liberty Torches. So
wait a minute, Obama got 16 Liberty Torches?
I'm glad he rolled out of bed and hit his head and became a libertarian, but it just was a real surprise to me.
Governor, I wanted to ask you, part of the reason...
Actually, we do have a caller.
Well, here, hold off on the caller. Part of the reason I'm so suspicious, or was so suspicious of Bob Barr, was because he was CIA. And I know a lot of people like myself are suspicious of the CIA. Now, just to clarify for our audience, for the conspiracy theorists, I mean, you've never been part of the CIA or the Bilderberg group or any of those groups, have you?
No, I have not. You know what? You talked earlier about politicians. I think politicians are the root of all evil. I've run for 2 political offices in my life. Governor of New Mexico, re-election as governor of New Mexico. Since I've left office, I have had nothing to do with government. Before I became governor of New Mexico, I had nothing to do with government. 0.
Well, Governor, you know what the word politics means, right? Poly is multiple.
I'm going to get to hear.
Blood-sucking parasite. So politics is multiple blood-sucking parasites.
Yes. Yes,
that's
the parasites.
What they are.
No, they really are. Well, and here's a question for you, Governor. Here's a question for you, Governor. We've got a caller with a question, and let's take that caller's question really quick. Caller.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hi guys, great show today. I'm glad to hear that Governor Johnson is thrown in with the LP. Great to see him, trying to push liberty through our party rather than the Republicans. I'd like to make a quick comment before my question. One of the things that an old-time Libertarian Party member said to me a while back is that we cannot succeed by marketing ourselves as Republican light, because anybody that we would attract that way would just vote for the Republicans in November. What we need to do is to stake out a principled, radical position for liberty. We can't do it by being Republican light. But my question is back to the Guantanamo thing. This kind of brings me back to it. We pretty much know that one of the reasons why all these trials were being held in Guantanamo rather than on United States soil is to avoid the habeas corpus rights, giving people their habeas corpus rights. And so I think that's another reason not to be doing this stuff offshore, but to give people a right to fair trial, just like our founding fathers said everybody had a right to. But my question is, as far as the United States having a base on the island of Cuba, how do we justify that? How do we justify holding a base in someone else's nation? Wouldn't that be kind of like Iran or Venezuela having a base in Monterey Bay or Los Angeles or somewhere?
Thank you, Alan. Great question.
I don't know what the history is of us having that base there, but I suppose it came at the cost of life and treasure, and I don't know what the history is, but we have it, and I would hate to be casting judgment on on what we should do with it, really not knowing that history. So,
okay,
I'm not
Governor, what about the other 800-plus bases that are all around the world in over 150 countries? What should we do about those bases?
Well, most of those are leased, aren't they?
I am, as President of the United States, I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. Now, that's not promising a balanced budget because Congress is going to have to actually write up that balanced budget, but I'm promising to submit it. In that balanced budget is a 43% reduction in military spending. I am not doing this in a vacuum. I met with 5 guys from the Cato Institute who do this for a living, and the premise is that we can provide a strong national defense for this country and still cut military spending by 43%. It's only going back to the year 2003. I think the fact that we're spending so much more money than what we're taking in, printing that money, is the biggest threat to our national security. So what is involved in a 43% reduction in the military? Well, that's reducing nuclear warheads from 2,300 down to 500. It's what you're talking about, our military presence, the military bases that we have all around the planet. I mean, that needs to be subject to a 43% reduction. Do we need 100,000 troops on the ground in Europe? Might not 57,000 troops do? And I got to tell you, I'm hard-pressed to know why we should have any troops at all on the ground in Europe, much less 57,000 versus 100,000. But it's that reduction. It's also reduction of those in uniform. It's the reduction of the civilian staff that support those in uniform. It's the conflicts that we're currently involved in. It's research and development, and it's intelligence. It's all the way across the board.
Governor, I'd like to ask you about what's about to be enacted, apparently, in March 1st, the Defense Reauthorization Act that Obama just signed into law. I see this as the beginning of a complete fascist takeover. I mean, it just seems to me that if we allow this to pass, if we allow this to continue, rather, that we're not going to have any freedoms left, because this authorizes the detention of U.S. citizens indefinitely without trial. And what are your comments about Obama signing this unprecedented law into effect?
Well, I issued a statement on it immediately, which is I would have vetoed the legislation on the basis of the military being able to detain a U.S. citizen without being charged. It's my understanding that the Obama administration is saying that, yeah, they signed the bill, and no, they have no intention of implementing that clause. I gotta point out to you guys, I'm as governor of New Mexico, I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I have no aversion whatsoever to vetoing legislation that isn't right. And I would have vetoed the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm sure I would have vetoed it for a number of reasons. I'm assuming it had a price tag associated with it, but I would have vetoed it. This is wrong. This is why we've fought wars, in my opinion, and now we're going to turn this on ourselves. There just doesn't seem to be an end to ways in which we're eroding our civil liberties.
Yeah, I mean, for people to actually believe that, they're adding it in the bill, and therefore, and to trust that they're not going to use it, but it's being added into the bill, that's like Hitler, releasing a memorandum and saying, I'm going to do everything in here, but don't worry about the final solution. That's just there for, we're not going to use that part of, I mean, that's crazy. If it's in there, chances are they're going to use it against us.
So just to make you aware, we have another caller.
Yeah.
Governor, I'd like, if you'd like to respond.
No, I agree with you. I think you're right on, and this is what we should be vigilant toward. We need to balance. We need to An earlier caller was talking about this. Speaking with broad brushstrokes, I think the Libertarian Party takes the best from both parties. The notion that we should balance the federal budget, the notion that we can't be spending more money than what we take in, and then couple that with the notion that let's keep government out of the bedroom, the notion of socially liberal, the notion of, look, decisions when it comes to me should only be made by me, as long as I'm not doing any harm to anyone else or potentially putting anyone else in harm's way. I think the majority of Americans are actually libertarians, and that is the definition of a classical liberal, fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Speaking with a broad brush.
I completely agree with you. Most Americans are once you break down the issues. There's a couple of things I want to say. We're running out of time here. If any of our listeners would like to learn more about Gary Johnson and where he's going to be, you can go to GaryJohnson2012.com. He's also accepting donations. I'm pretty sure about that. And well, I'd like to thank our listeners for donating at thepropagandahour.com. Propaganda Hour is listener-supported, and we're looking to expand to 2 hours and move to some new radio stations, so we appreciate it. Now, Sal, would you like to take that caller and get this last question in?
Yeah, let's quickly take the caller with this question, and then we've got to wrap up the show.
All right. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, Governor. I would like to see all of our elected leaders in Congress and the White House submit to a polygraph test. Would you support that?
No, as a libertarian, I would not support that because those polygraph tests just, have you ever done anything wrong in your life? And if you answer...
The government uses them every day.
I understand that. I do. It's... Politicians are the root of all evil. I think they've got their hands out for money. They're selling off the system. You get to the front of the line if you're willing to pay for it, and that is not what this country is founded on. This country is founded on the notion of a level playing field for everybody. And I'll just tell you, as governor of New Mexico for 8 years, good government was easy. It wasn't hard, and it was easy from the standpoint of, look, we can create a level playing field. If you're willing to work hard and innovate, then you ought to be able to get ahead. Something that right now in this country we're getting further and further away from.
How are you going to solve the corruption problem?
Who's interrupting? Who is that?
It's Mike.
Mike, what were you saying?
Yeah, how are you going to solve the corruption problem? I think that's what the caller is looking for.
I think that I'm advocating throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with the fair tax. I think the fair tax actually issues pink slips to about half of Washington lobbyists.
Okay,
because
we're
no
right
more,
about out of time here. I want to thank you for coming on. Thank all our listeners for listening in.
Wow, yeah, we've got
Saturday morning at noon to 1.
Governor, thank you
guys. It was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, Governor, I really appreciate the
Progressive
interview.
talk
Great
for
interview.
the Monterey Bay Area. This is KRXA 540, Carmel Valley, Monterey Salinas, and Santa Cruz. For yourself.